listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Did you know that fear of public speaking is ranked among the top 3 most common phobias? People are afraid of public speaking more than they are afraid of dying. And why is that? Is it this inherent fear that's been lying dormant for generations within us? Or is it a factor of our societal conditioning? Today, I'm joined by Leslie Fiorenzo, a business presentation coach, and we talk about this fear of failure or fear of embarrassment. Why are we so afraid of public speaking? And how do we overcome this sabotaging inner critic and embrace our inner champion? As always, this is only the beginning of the conversation. You can head over to giveyourselfsomeleeway.com and let me know what you think. Reach out on social media at eugene.leeway on Instagram or shoot me an email, eugene@leeway.ie. Thank you, and I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Leslie Fiorenzo. Leslie, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway, and thank you again for taking the time to join the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Eugene.
Leslie, as a business presentation coach, what got you so interested in this area, and why do you serve the people you do?
I think I've been at it for a really long time. I got in trouble when I was 3 or 4 and went to the church next door after Sunday school got out and stood in line and said to the kids, "Shake hands with Leslie Bross." My parents had no idea where I was. Rightfully, they were worried, but I've just always loved connecting with people, always loved being in front of an audience, if you will. And much of my corporate career, Eugene, has been presenting, training. I went and got my master's in human resource development so I could have some expertise. So it's maybe naturally ingrained in me, but I also know that data would say 90% of people or some crazy number are petrified to be in front of others. And wow, it's a shame to live in a petrified state. I think it's when people are scared, it doesn't serve yourself, it doesn't serve others. So I'm trying to help, especially business owners that want to get their message out that are reluctant to do that.
Because I know actually there's this definitely statistic there where people are more afraid of public speaking than they are afraid of death. That they would rather die than speak in public.
Yeah. And speaking in public is way easier. I've not experienced death, so I'm not sure firsthand experience, right? But I think it's better.
And what do you feel, let's say, is the major setback when a business owner or maybe someone is probably doing marketing or sales pitches a lot? What do you feel is the biggest setback when or the limiting belief or what's holding them back from pursuing public speaking in the first place?
Well, there's a number of things, but I talk to my clients about changing your inner critic to inner champion, because we all have that little voice in our head that says, you're not good enough, you're stupid, who do you think you are? You don't deserve this. It's not all these negative things. It's there to keep us safe. It does serve a purpose. It's not helpful. We need to help with a voice that's helpful. At least that's what I believe. And knowing that I'm not going to ever necessarily get rid of it, but I can turn it off and I can use it to help me. If I conjure it as a champion, as an ally, if I say to it, I know your job, I know you're just trying to help me, but the way you're going about it isn't helpful. Here's what would help. So, and being really specific about what would help. Like, I need you to tell me that I need you to be encouraging. I need you to tell me that failure is simply first attempt at learning. It's not the end of the world. I know I can try it again. It's all an experiment. I know that one of the people that I coach with, that's my coach, is always talking about the fact that life is just a series of experiments. And I heard a podcast and the podcast talking about gentleman started, Sam Walton, here in the United States. I think Walmart might be worldwide, but I'm not sure. They're huge corporate headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas. They're a chain of stores, of retail stores, discount retail stores. And he looked at everything as an experiment. Nothing got him down. He'd laugh failures, and he had a lot of failures. If you look at his history before Walmart got to be the big dog it is today, lots of things did not go right in his life. So I just try to keep that in mind.
Outside of the business world as well, outside of the workplace, do these presentation skills also help when it comes to maybe influencing your family and friends, how you carry out a conversation and how you maybe speak to your kids as well? Outside of your professional life and outside of the workplace, do these presentation skills also come into play?
I believe it does. As a matter of fact, Eugene, I wrote a book called The 21 Lessons to Mastering the Difficult Conversation, which is available on Amazon. So shameless plug, but it is communication, my confidence in coming across, how I come across to people. It's super important, I think, in all aspects. And if we're afraid to open our mouth, afraid to say what's on our mind, some people say, speak your truth. It can really be challenging because then we internalize things. And when you are talking about burnout, imagine that is a factor that leads up to burnout. If I feel like I can't share what I need to share for whatever reason, usually it's an internal story that I'm telling myself that's not true. But helping people get clear in their message, get confident in their message, maintain calm. I believe Toastmasters International has a saying, helping your butterflies, the butterflies in your stomach, fly in formations. Many times these conversations, especially if it's with family and we're talking about a challenging subject, maybe it's with our partner, maybe it's with our teen, maybe it's with our own parent, we can feel that angst come upon us. And if we're really tuning into that and not our message, it's not helpful.
And as you said there, that it's almost like a negative self-narrative, as you said. This imposter syndrome, it comes up a lot in these type A mindset, high achievers, this imposter syndrome that comes into play when it comes to public speaking. How does that present itself, or from your experience, where do you see, let's say, what is the common self-narrative?
It stops people. Well, probably a common self-narrative, or there could be many, but maybe it's this isn't going to work, or I'm really not good at this. I mean, what I encourage my students to do, the people who take my course, the people I coach, ask questions like, how can I make this work? What can I do? Let me rephrase that, because a what question is better than how. So what can I do to make this fun? What can I do to make this work? What can I bring to the table? Those kinds of things. And think of it in a positive light. Visualize it going well. When we visualize success, any pro or Olympic athlete will tell you the importance of a visualization routine, seeing yourself completing that goal, seeing yourself being successful, because many times people get tripped up because they think, oh, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be awful, and they create that vision in their head, and that's the playback. So change the playback, change it to, this is going to be amazing, I'm going to love it, it's going to be so much fun. Just changing those words, enjoying every single moment. I make a mistake, I make a boo-boo, I say the wrong thing. Oh, well, it was an experiment. I can do different next time, but I learned from it.
And even at that, when you say like, oh, use it as a challenge, pretend it's like a game or like a video game, like you can always learn from your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, a lot of people have this fear of failure, and they almost wear it as like as if it's like the shame of failing once in their life, it will stick with them forever.
I mean, then so why? I mean, life is a series of different events. It's a series of different experiments, whatever. But I just feel like that's sad that someone is taking that view. I believe it's a view. I think it can change. Sometimes we have to work with a professional. Obviously, we're both coaches. We believe in the process of coaching, but maybe it's a therapist. Maybe it's so therapy, I think, deals with the past. Coaching is about moving forward in the future. That's how I view it. So maybe it's a combination of both, but I don't think people have to stay stuck. There's stories and stories. Abraham Lincoln, a former president of the United States back in the 1800s, 1860. His rate of failure was phenomenal. All the attempts he had. You might know, so these are all American references and you have an international audience, but Michael Jordan, a basketball player here in the States, got cut from his high school basketball team. Walt Disney was told he didn't have any talent, and he's created things. I mean, just the people that were told stop, quit, and didn't listen to others, didn't listen to their inner critic. There's a huge list of those folks. So be one of those.
Yeah, it's when you have all those examples, it's very easy to be like, oh, but sure, like anyone else who's been put down because their beliefs are too big, or their dreams are too big that no one else could see them or could visualize them the way that they did, and they pursued it anyway. Sometimes you just say that to someone's like, oh, but sure, Walt Disney did it, or Michael Jordan did it, and straight away you're going to have that judge, you're going to have that niggling negative self-narrative, you're going to have that inner critic saying, but I'm not Michael Jordan, I'm not Walt Disney, who am I? And it's like, but you have unlimited potential and you won't know unless you try.
Exactly. And I believe we're all destined for greatness in varying degrees, right? We're not all going to be Walt Disney. No, we're not all going to be Nelson Mandela or whoever else we aspire to be, but we can take those small steps and we make an impact. Every single person is important to making an impact. I truly believe that, no matter what their role. Martin Luther King said, if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be, right? Whatever your role, be the best you can be and strive for excellence. Get rid of perfection. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. I have a mantra that a mentor of mine taught me: done is better than perfect. So you just have to go out and do it. Like Nike says, right? Just do it.
And as you said there, it's small steps. What small steps would someone take if they want to get better at public speaking? What is let's say the smallest, let's say, hurdle to get over to get started?
So book yourself a presentation if it's in person. There are any number of local community groups that look for speakers for their meetings. I think Rotary often has people in local Rotary clubs, local Lions clubs, local Kiwanis clubs. Those kinds of organizations often have meetings where they want a speaker. Okay, I can't find one of those. Then make a recording and post it on your social media. Talk about a subject that's near and dear to your heart, and just hit most everybody, probably not 100%, but your smartphone is an easy way to make a recording. Just make sure your phone is not going to vibrate, right? You've got it still and on a mount or a perch, if you will, not holding it in your hand that's going to vibrate when you and just do it 2 or 3 times. The beauty of a recording, Eugene, is, you probably know this, is you can edit it, you can trash it when you're live. But just remember, even if you're live and you trip over a word or two, or you say something that, gosh, I didn't want to say it that way, your audience doesn't know what you intended to say. So it doesn't matter. As long as you come back, you make your point. I like to have some bullet points in front of me if I'm doing a presentation so I can keep myself focused. I am liable to go off on a tangent if I'm not careful. I've learned that about me, but it's practice.
Yeah. I think one of the other issues when you know you can edit it, you're very quick to like pause and stop and go back. I remember the first time when I tried to make my first TikTok video, it took me about 4 hours because I kept on tripping over my words, going back, editing it, trying to redo that first 2 minutes. And it was a 30-second clip, and it took me about 4 hours of editing just to make it. And even at the end of it, I was like, no, this is still embarrassing. I'm still not proud of it. When I stopped caring about all of that, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. So many mistakes. There's only one way to learn. If I get used to the same mistakes, trying to, instead of pausing every time I use an or an or a filler word, I was like, no, just go through with it and you'll get better with time. And if anything, people are probably not going to even take notice. And as you improve, people are probably like, oh, this person who I've been following for a while seems more confident. And they're not going to be falling over every and ah, saying like, oh, I'm not going to follow them because they can't speak clearly, or they think you have a speech impediment, or you're always ranting. So like, if you're always fearing that you won't get the external validation, or that people are judging you, people aren't judging you as much as you are judging yourself. Your inner critic is always going to be speaking louder in your mind than anybody else's.
Yeah, that's really true. And everyone started somewhere, but you have to start. I mean, I was listening to an Audible book by Amy Porterfield, and she worked for Tony Robbins and left on her, started her own business. She does a lot of online learning courses. I think that's her claim to fame, is helping people take what they know and turning it into an online course. And she talks about in her first videos. And she said, but I started, that's the point. I got going and I did it and I got better and I got better. So just start.
Yes, that's one thing I always coming back to. And there's even one podcast episode I always refer back to by Ryan Daniel Moran, and it's just called Just Start. And I'm like, if you ever feel stuck and you don't know what to do, or you're over analyzing things, I just send them the link to that podcast episode. It's called Just Start, and listen, it's like 6 minutes long. And it's like, if that doesn't get you motivated to just do something, just one thing, one step in the right direction, and that's how you build momentum. So other than, let's say, the fear of failure that stops people from getting started, there's also, and it's funny because people don't think about it, but there's also the polar opposite, which is the fear of success, that people are afraid of the fact that, but what if this works out? What will I do then?
So, I mean, it's about making your dreams come true, visualizing success. So I have a friend who is a psychologist, and she takes her clients through an exercise she calls what if. So what if what I think is going to happen happens? What then what? And just answering some of those questions. So can I visualize that? So, okay, my dream does come true. I am whatever it is, right? I'm successful in my profession, or I do this talk and people come up to me and want to learn more. Wow, how great is that? So really, again, sitting with that and knowing that it's going to be okay. The interesting thing about our brains, Eugene, is it doesn't know, can't differentiate from what really happens. So this experience you and I are having right now to an imaginary experience. If I see it going really well, if I see you and I really connecting, making a big difference, or if I would have visualized it like, this is awful, which I didn't do, but our brain doesn't know the difference. So when we think about that idea of success, what does that look like, and the positive impact? The challenge sometimes is that I think, well, I had to work really hard to get there, so I'm going to have to work really hard to maintain it. And I believe people will tell you that once you it gets easier. The more I do something, I'll use that age-old analogy about riding a bike. Once you learn how to ride a bike, you have muscle memory. And yes, it might take a minute to get back on and get a balance again if it's been a few years, but it's not going to go away. You can't unlearn it. It's going to be ingrained in you.
So yeah, I think it always comes back to just putting in the reps, regardless. Whatever is stopping you from getting started, it's like, oh, I have no experience with something, or that's the reason, that's the evidence you give yourself that you're not confident get started. It's like, well, if you don't start somewhere, then you'll never have the evidence that you're able to do something. So yes, be
Right.
and that always comes back to the growth mindset as well. It's
Yes.
in being uncomfortable, that's where you learn to grow. You learn to adapt.
Exactly.
You adapt to that discomfort until it becomes comfortable.
Your brain will eventually, yeah, exactly. And so your brain is going to say, oh, she's at it again, or he's at it again. Okay, I guess I'll just go along for the ride because this is how it's going to be, right?
As you said there about the inner critic versus the inner champion, what are the, let's say, the polar opposite, let's say, traits of the inner champion compared to the inner
Well,
critic?
yeah, it's a voice that says you can do it. It's a voice that cheers you on. I find music, inspiring songs to be really helpful. So I have 2 or 3 that I really like to listen to. I encourage people to create a routine, a ritual, a system, whatever they want to call it, but something that they do that helps them. So I heard this the other day. I didn't know this until recently. You might know the entertainer Beyonce. She has a alternate persona that she has on stage called Sasha Fierce. And Sasha Fierce comes out when she straps on her stilettos to go out on stage. That's her entertainment persona, however you want to say that. And so I think it's helpful to create in your head something like that, a vision of your successful you. And there's a trigger point for her. It's her putting on her stilettos. For maybe for you, it's pushing the record button or whatever it is. Everybody needs to determine that for themselves. But a ritual, a routine, a system to encourage that, have it come out. And it could also be, I love inspirational quotes. I use them all the time. I have them hanging in my office to just remind me. I don't remember what author it was, Eugene, but I know I read a story. He talked about sometimes he got writer's block or sometimes he was frustrated. He just would keep fan mail posted in his office where he could read it. So he knew people liked his stuff. People were saying, this is great. And so he could summon that champion that like, oh yeah, I know I can do this. So keeping it in front of you, I think is a big piece.
It seems like at face value, it seems like external validation, that he kind of has to look at the fan mail in order to keep going. But at the same time, if that's the motivation you need to keep going, to keep the momentum, it goes beyond external validation in the sense that it's remembering the people that you serve. And I think that's where it goes beyond external validation. It's remembering the purpose, the reason why, like your ikigai, if you're familiar, your life's worth, your life's
Yes,
purpose.
yes, your life's work. Yeah.
Yes. And as you remember why you're doing what you're doing and what is the purpose behind it, who is it that you're serving, who is it that you're helping, and it gives you that, okay, I'm not only being here, I can't afford to be embarrassed or holding back myself for fear of others judging me, because the reason I'm doing it in the first place is to serve that someone. So it's what keeps you going. It can be whether it's the fan mail, whether it's the quotes on the wall, maybe it's a photo, again a vision board, or maybe it's a photo of your family, or something from a friend who probably struggled with, as you said, public speaking, or has a fear of failure, and you're like, no, I want to help these people. I want to help this. This is who I serve. I think that's the I think that's the key to anything in life. If you ever want to push yourself forward, to grow, or to overcome that fear of failure, it's to remember why you're doing it in the first place. What's pushing you to serve.
Yeah. So there are two that we innately have as humans that we're born with: fear of falling and fear of loud noises. Every other fear learned. So at some point now, I know this goes back, the fear of public speaking is somewhat ingrained in us because it goes back to times when we were living in small tribes on this planet, and we literally had to protect ourselves for our life, right, from wild animals or warring tribes. So those eyes peering out at the bushes, that's akin to the audience looking at you. So that can be scary, but it's made up, right? It's not real. We don't live like that anymore. So I think that's helpful to keep that in mind. What's the saying? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, somebody looking at you is not going to kill you.
That's interesting because I would have thought that it was uh, almost a state of conditioning, a conditioned belief. Because when we're kids, when we're toddlers, we're always blah, 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 and singing and screaming to our heart's content. And it's our parents who tell us to shut the hell up and shushing us and telling us to quieten down. And I think I thought that's where the fear of public speaking came from, because it was like, oh, if I ever raise my voice or want to speak for myself or share an opinion, I'm afraid I'm going to be judged and someone's going to shut me up.
Mm-hmm. It is both. Absolutely. It is from our family of origin, and it is many times and there were generations that children should be seen and not heard. So they didn't offer opinions. They weren't allowed to speak up, those kinds of things. And maybe in your family, maybe in your family of origin, you were not encouraged to express yourself, express emotions. You were maybe just, this is your destiny based on who you are in this family, and that's how it is. And it's hard to break free of those things. It can be done, but it's hard to break free.
So
And again, that's where I'm going to plug coaching, because I think that's where someone like working with someone like us is helpful, right?
yes, exactly. It always comes back to, like, well, what I found, it always comes back to the conditioned beliefs, the things that we've held on to for 10, 20, 30, 40 years of our lives that have been conditioned into us from our childhood. And yes, as you said, there's the ancestral traits as well that are, let's say, go beyond our conditioning, that we're like, okay, how do I break those traits? If it's in our genetics, almost, if it's epigenetic. But I think it's the conditioned beliefs are like, okay, at least if the conditioned belief is kind of piggybacking on that ancestral trait, as you said, from the primal, the tribal times of our ancestors. But if a conditioned belief is piggybacking on it, it's like, okay, well, at least we can break the conditioned one, so that it's not as empowered or reinforced by the ancestral trait, as you said. That it's like, okay, we might not be able to address the ancestral thing right now, but we can address what's conditioned. And it's through repetitions and positive reinforcement and reframing that narrative that we can address that. Yes. So at least with coaches, we're like, okay, we might not be able to do with the ancestral thing, but we can definitely break your conditioning that's here.
Yes, we can. Oh, our brain's job, the number one job of our brain, when you think about conditioning, is to keep us safe. And so part of that is, yes, I understand you're trying to be helpful, you want to keep me safe, but it's not going to, it's going to help me in the long run. It'll spur me on in the long run. It'll be okay in the long run.
So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Leslie, what's the best place they can get a hold of you?
So they can visit my website. So it's lesliefiorenzo.coach. And I can send you that link so you can put it in the show notes. I think that sometimes happens with people. And then if they want to talk to me, they can book a call. I have a free resource there they can download. They can also find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel dedicated to helping people overcome their fear. So
Brilliant. Awesome. Again, Leslie, thank you again for joining the show. It's great to have you.
thank you. Great to be here. Appreciate it.